Around 2,550 years ago, in the north of India, in Nepal, which nowadays is known as Nepal, was born one prince called Prince Siddhartha Gautama from the Sakya clan. His father was a local king, and he grew up with all the richness and the pleasures of being a prince. Siddhartha Gautama, later known as Buddha Shakyamuni, most commonly known as the Buddha, had a life with issues, with problems, with difficulties, as everyone had. But he had one particular characteristic, many qualities, but there was one characteristic which for me was very important, and it's not what is commonly seen, is that Buddha never accepted the fact that one must suffer. My own perception is that Buddha had this very strong clarity since the beginning that there must be a way to reach a state of peace that is beyond suffering, independently of the context in which one finds himself or herself. So, Buddha tried in many ways. He was induced in all sorts of pleasures and power and wealth and everything, and he saw that it was not enough. Pleasures would come and then would go. And then he saw that suffering was inevitable, through sickness, through old age, death, and so on. So by seeing that the context in which he was not actually truly solving his main issue, he went to look in other places. So he left the royal palace and he started learning and practicing all the different main religions that were present at his time. And one of the main forms of spiritual practice that was present at that time were practices of asceticism. So basically, Buddha indulged himself very strongly into these practices of meditation. For example, he reached very strong levels and deep levels of concentration, in which it didn't matter anymore what would happen to his body, if it was in pain or in anything, he would stay in inner states of bliss. But what happened is that at some point, these deep meditative states, these deep samadhis, they would end. And then the suffering would come back again. So he saw that this was also not a solution. You need to find a way to be in peace with yourself and others, independently of the context, and not in a momentary way. It needs to be something on a long-term basis, a sort of permanent state of peace. And Buddha believed very much in it. So, going through a long process of research, inner research, he finally reached, making a long story short, he finally reached what we call the state of Buddhahood or enlightenment, which is he was able to develop his inner qualities as he understood clearly that his own suffering was not coming from the context, but was coming from his own ignorance as grasping at reality in an inconsistent way. It was coming from his own aversion, from his own selfishness, and so on. So by developing love, compassion, stability, generosity, kindness, inner peace, and most of all wisdom, a very consistent way of relating to reality. Through this, Buddha was able to overcome all his inner defilements, and by that to overcome his own suffering and reach the state which we call Buddhahood. Once Buddha reached this state, he reached his final goal, he saw that he needed to share it with others. So he started traveling around India by foot. And wherever he would go, people would come to him and they would ask for advices and they would ask for help and they would come with questions. And Buddha would answer the questions of them, adapting the path to the mentality and capacity of each one of them. So basically what Buddha did, he was sharing with people the worldview, the knowledge, the understanding of reality, the rules of conduct, and techniques, tools, such as meditation, with visualization, breathing, art, sacred art, in different ways, of how to help people to develop their own inner qualities, such as wisdom and love, and by that to overcome their own defilements in order to reach this state of peace, so-called nirvana, which is the state beyond suffering. And Buddha did this by adapting the teachings, the methods, to the mentality and capacity of each one. That's why when later Buddha passed away, as we called enter into paranirvana, when Buddha died, Buddha's disciples gathered at one point and they saw that Buddha taught in different ways to different people, so different traditions came as a result of that. And the reason why there are so many different traditions is because Buddha himself taught differently to different people with different capacities and mentalities, but all the traditions bring to the same result. They go to the same objective of inner peace. And later, these teachings, which is way of seeing reality, a paradigm, worldview, rules of conduct, techniques of meditation, and so on, were passed down from disciple to disciple, as from generation to generation, until our own days, coming to ourselves. And in this process also, the different masters that were teaching, they were also adapting the teachings and the methods to the mentality and culture of their own time. So that's why there are so many different traditions, which is something which I think is wonderful, because we have so many different ways of seeing things. We are not all the same. So we need a different approach. And I think this is something very special, that there are all so many different approaches there. So basically Buddhism, for me, is a method which comprehends the way of seeing reality, which we call worldview, a paradigm, comprehends rules of conduct, the way how to relate in the daily life, how to use our body, speech, and mind, and techniques, tools to develop our inner qualities, such as meditation, in order to grow on our own inner path, which means in order to develop our inner qualities, in order to reach an inner state of peace that is independent of external conditions. And this comprehends developing love towards others. So the final objective of Buddhism is to reach a state of inner peace in order to help others also to reach the same state of inner peace.